How you doing, everybody? So we have OTA patch today. A lot of changes here. Most important one being Blob. We're gonna go over all of those real quickly, but should be good. I'm pretty happy overall with the changes. I think they've done a good job this time. So let's get started. Hello and welcome, everyone. We have our OTA patch discussions changes for January 18th. So essentially, the big news, right, is do we have an answer to Thanos Blob? Strongest deck in the meta, kind of dominating. Pretty much everyone's playing that, or some version or some counter. Fortunately, we do have some changes here. Hopefully, will it be enough, right? Sometimes Second Dinner kind of gets a little lax with these changes. We'll see if it's going to be enough to kind of make a dent, make a impact, and really change things. So let's get started. First thing right off, we do have these blob changes. So it went from being a 6-4 to a 6-0, which is a little bit interesting, right? Like, but not too important. I think even if you knock out 4 power from Blob, it's still going to be very powerful, very strong. But the main thing is with the ability. So it goes from merging your whole deck into merging cards until this gains 15 or more power. So now there is kind of like a ceiling to Blob in that you're not going to be merging your whole deck anymore. You're going to be merging until you have 15 or more power. Now, that still means it's a pretty good card. It means that basically it's going to have 15 plus power, and that's going to be mostly better than most 6 drops, anyways, right? So, like, it's not that you can now just have 40 power anymore. You can get like 30 plus if the last card it eats is an infinite or anything like that, but that's significantly harder to do. And it means that you either have to be building maybe a non-Thanos version of the deck with just high-powered late game cards, or you just just get lucky. But it just means like the the ceiling of this card goes down a lot. It's very unlikely you'll be seeing 30, even 20 power blobs very often now with this change. And since we're starting from a 0 base instead of a 4 cost base, right, you do have to eat more cards. So it is a little bit of effort, but it's a good change, in my opinion, to kind of tone down that high roll potential of Blob where everyone's just putting in Thanos because you have more cards in that particular deck. So I do think this is a good change. It does mean that you do have some new synergies to think about, right? So I wouldn't necessarily say negative is the most synergistic, but it is definitely something to look into. Another very powerful card to combo it was Ravona now, right? So now you can just go Ravona, play this on 5, and then maybe Taskmaster on 6 or something like that. So there's definitely some more power to this card than it used to be. So there's kind of like maybe even an upside to playing with this now compared to what it was before. There's other strategies you can at least experiment with. So definitely still think this is going to be a strong card. It's just that the potential ceiling of this card has gone down quite a bit, and I think that's good, right? We don't want to have changes that completely destroy our cards so that's unplayable. I still think this is going to see play. It's just that you're not going to have that, hey, I play a 6 drop, it gives me 40 power. Now I can do anything I want. Generally, I'm a fan of this change and think it's in the right direction. Helps kind of lower that Blob dominance that we've had. Blob has been the best card probably in the meta since release, probably. So I think this is a good change overall. Now let's read. So Blob has been a metagame terror for a good minute. Yeah, okay. So it's only surprising thing about this change is probably that it includes a text adjustment in the OTA. This card threatens to create absurd amounts of power and release values in the format like Shang-Chi and Shao King have not worked. Yeah. The ladders are a fair bit on us. Internally, we feared being so easily dusted by a 2-3 Shao King would be too punishing for the new card, but times change, and it turns out the 4 defensive power was totally unnecessary. It's important to retain a couple key elements of Blob. First was rewarding eating large amounts of power. Second was keeping the total power of Blob variable for the opponent to make it more difficult to combat. Yeah, that's super fair. This change accomplishes both creating different blobs according to the order of cards in your deck. It also weakens blobs and Thanos, specifically as smaller power cards are more likely to land closer to threshold less. It adds an easy dial first to tune. Okay, so yeah, this is true because now you can just say, oh, it's still too good, 14 power base or something like that, right? So it does help. Like it gives them that's something very important, I think, in the realm of card design, where you have easy knobs to turn if things are too problematic. And old blobs, you had no knobs. It's just, do you want 40 power or 36 power? You know, like it's so whatever. Here you can now kind of control it. If it's still too good, you can lower the threshold. So that definitely changed a lot. So that's pretty cool to see. But yeah, overall, I'm happy with this change. This is the most important change in the OTA here. And to me, I think they did a good job. Next up, we have Destroyer. Yeah, this one makes sense. Power creep exists, guys. Yeah. And now, it's fine to have a 16 power Destroyer. Like, it's super fair. So I don't have an issue with this. It's just reverting a change to Destroyer. Power creep exists is what they're saying, right? Amongst series 1 or 2. We'll continue evaluating the relative power of success cards throughout the year and expecting many more changes. Yeah, makes sense. I'm fine with this. This is not a big deal. Next up, we have Viper moving from 3/4 to 3/5. One of your other cards here. So the ability does not change. Viper is now at 3/5. I don't know. I don't see too much Viper anymore since the nerf. It used to be comboed with lots of toxic cards, but now you can just play Annihilus to be that catch-all. So you don't really need Viper in your deck to perform that function. Now you can still maybe run it if you're not fully. I mean, I don't see junk decks not playing Annihilus, so I still think you probably don't need it, but at least it gives you more options. Sometimes you're not going to draw Annihilus, things like that. You can still just throw a hood over there. Sentry is still it's awkward. Usually by that time you want to be playing different cards, but it's still something to think about. We took a conservative approach to adjusting Viper over the holidays, and fortunately those fears were unfounded. However, we decided to keep Viper at 3 costs for a few reasons. One is that it lets Viper more naturally combo with locations like Savage Lands and Shadowlands, which reveal on turn 3 a third of the time. Who cares about that? Okay. Another is that that is such a cop out. Another is that it increases the design space for building cards like the Hood is as 2 costs because Viper can gift them on curve. So it just I don't agree with their reasoning, to be fair. I just think like the card is maybe annoying at 2, and they're happy that it's not at 2. Their reasonings I don't necessarily agree with, but it's generally fine. I don't know if this is gonna make Viper see more play. To be honest, usually the card has to do a lot of work. I do think this is a better change for Viper. Viper was not really seeing play at all, so I think this is in the right direction. I just don't know if it's enough. But it is an annoying card, so I can see why they're maybe like, it's fine. Let's not have this like high presence metagame. Next up, we have Selene. This one that makes sense with the Viper change, right? You used to assume that you were going to play Selene with Viper, but because a lot of people aren't really playing Viper and you're really just playing Annihilus, this just ends up being an Annihilus card. But then you don't necessarily need this to be something that requires effort, right? You're not really hurting your opponents by giving them a -1, like as your main combo. And sometimes this can hurt you because let's say you want to play Selene and then you have like Hood or something, some other negative card to play. You're Your Selene, if it's played first, and a lot of times it's a one cost, so it's going to be on the board early, will be the one to be moved before the other negative card, right? So you end up not moving the card you want to move because you don't have space. So I think it's fine to change it to a 1/2. It means that it's a lot more flexible. You can play in more decks. It doesn't have to be an Annihilus card, which I think is a kind of an issue because right now, like a good combo you can play with this is this with goblins, right? But goblins don't have to be played in Annihilus decks and junk decks. They can play in Ravona decks, things like that. So now it being a 1/2 means you can just kind of play this generically in those type of decks without having to deal with this -1 that you can't get rid of. And it just means like it's not constrained, right? As a regular 1 drop, where before it was more just constrained in specific archetypes. So I think this is a good idea. And stats for Selene aren't very good, so this can help in that kind of function to make it a little bit feel a little bit better. So Viper was originally designed to combo with Viper and Black Widow, which is part of why her own power is negative, increases the risk reward for the strong combinations. However, it turns out that subsequent changes to Viper and Black Widow also weaken these combinations plenty. So we nerfed Black Widow. We didn't think about the other cards. I mean, we nerfed Black Widow and Viper. We didn't think about Selene, and now Selene sucks because the combos aren't as easy to complete. Yeah, Annihilus hasn't been much of a factor. Yeah, you don't need a Selene for Annihilus. So adding some power here to let that card better stand on its own. Yeah, I mean, that's just like fair. Like you think about changing your card, you don't think about all the cards with effects sometimes, and then you see, oh, because we changed this, all the other cards get worse, things like that. But yeah, overall, like this is a good change for Selene, so no problems here. I have been asking for this change for a while, and I'm glad to see they've done this. Like, make it a 1/2. What's the downside? Like 1 drops are crazy strong. You're like, why is Elektra so weak? I think this helps Elektra a lot. I've been asking for this, so this is like super fine for me here. So we've explored a variety of directions for improving Elektra, and we're likely to continue doing so. Elektra has an amazing story, great variants, also plays an important role in teaching new cards about sequencing cards and imagining different locations. We want to improve Elektra for a while to make this iconic character more enjoyable. We wanted to lose out an important function of play. For now, we're just giving an initial power to singer. I think that is probably very helpful for Elektra. Like making it a 1/2 means that it actually feels like a card to play. So, happy to see Elektra getting buffed. This is something I've liked to see for a while. So definitely hoping that this might help Elektra see some play. This might also help Zoo decks that play a lot of 1 drops. Like this is a pretty important card for them. Um, well, it wasn't because it was too bad, but now it might be a pretty important card for them. So yeah, cool to see. Dazzler. I know I have a different skin, but I like this one more than the original. I don't like the original at all, so bear with me. But Dazzler's getting changed from a 3/2 to a 2/2. Still has the same power, so it doesn't lose any ability or anything. It's just basically getting 1 cost cheaper. And I think this finally will let Dazzler see some play. Now the payoff is a 2/8, which is significantly good, like quite good to have a 2/8 potential. I think you're going to see a lot more Dazzlers in the game finally with this change compared to before. So just think Dazzler can see some play. It does require a bit of work, right? You have to have decks that can fill the board. But being a 2 cost, I think, is just where you will actually see Dazzler see some play. Like they've been trying to fix Dazzler forever, da 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 da. And I think finally they've done it. Finally, they now have a playable Dazzler that people will start adding into their decks and experimenting with and trying to find the best combination. Like even if you just have 2 boards full, it's a 2/6. Like that is pretty strong, right? 1 is a 2/4, right? 0 is a 2/2. 2/2 is nothing, right? 2/4 is still not that good. But 2/6, 2/8, those are very promising numbers. And if you can build decks that can take advantage of that, Like that is a reason to play this card. So I finally think you're going to be seeing some Dazzlers in the game after a year plus, years or a long time of not having any Dazzler meta presence. So I think this is finally a good change for her. Dazzler's another card that could use some shine or attention with the initial change to 3 cost Dazzler to see if Silver Surfer players would be excited to pair Dazzler with Brood. But no, they said no. So it's time to try something else. Dazzler is a card rewards playing efficiency so that you can get all the cards out, which means an energy reduction should be helpful. Yeah, I agree. I think this should be helpful. So I have big hopes for Dazzler in the metagame now, and we'll have to see what players do with her. And then is that the last one? We have one more. Oh no, we have a couple more actually. So we have Hercules going from a 4-6 to a 4-7, and I think this is going to do so much nothing. Personally, I don't think this fixes Hercules at all. Hercules has consistent issues. Hercules is an awkward card to play. Being 4 cost means you have to play him instead of other cards you might want to be playing. It's just not in a good spot, and this 1 power isn't changing anything. So I have no hopes for this fixing Hercules at all. And I don't know. Like there needs to be more work. Move cards need more love, essentially, in my opinion. I just think move is the weakest official archetype, and more changes, more improvements could do them some good. Hercules released weaker than we like, so we're adding extra power. Our goal remains to try to find an execution that builds an interesting move card at 4 costs, because diversifying the strategy options across more costs is key to ensuring we have a lot of gameplay variety. We may consider revisiting the effect in the future for improves unworkable at this cost. Yeah, I mean, it just reminds me of Phoenix Force, where Phoenix Force is not a bad card, but it's not consistent. Hercules, arguably, if things work out, is not a bad card, but it's also not consistent, and it has kind of that same problem. So I don't really think this is changing much at all, but we'll have to see, right? Let the data decide. Then, my opinion is just like I don't think it's going to be very good. And the last one we have is Dazzler. So Dazzler's going from a 2-2 to a 2-0. Oh no. But it's getting a buff on its ability. So instead of when you move it, instead of getting +2 for each location enemy card, you're now getting +3. Now, I actually think Dazzler was a decently strong card, potentially. But as I can talk about it now, like I can see where the issues come, because it does require a lot of work, and it also requires your opponent to be stacking a lane. Almost no one stacks all 4 cards early enough for Dazzler to make sense. So usually best case scenario you're getting 3, right? Or you're comboing with Heimdall, right? Heimdall final turn, like that's actually like pretty good. But here now you have this payoff where if you're hitting 2 or more, it's better. Well, 2 is the same. 1 is worse. 2 is the same. 3 or more is better. Or if you move it multiple times, is also better. So there's definitely a lot more potential for the Dazzler to be a big bomb in your deck, to be one of your win conditions in your deck. And I think move needs more win conditions that are like not so convoluted, right? This one is just move it into cards with lots of cards there. Like it's not that hard. So I think this helps move a little bit. And when you look at their explanation, they actually say that Dazzler's been one of the weaker move cards for a while, which I'm a little surprised about, right? It looks to me like one of the better move cards. The 2-drop with the potential to be a 2/10, like that's pretty good. But apparently that's too hard to make work consistently. And now it's a 2-drop with the potential to be a 2/12, right? Like very, very good. And it has even higher potential if you double move it or you move it multiple times, The one like caveat that used to be cool was that you were able to do something like play Human Torch, Dazzler, Doctor Strange, right? And then since both of the cards have 2 costs, they'd move both of them, right? Like that was something you were able to do. Now you don't really get to do that. But you could argue that moving Dazzler that early isn't a good play anyways. So there's there are arguments here, but I think overall this is a very good change for Dazzler. Maybe weaker to Shadow King, but who cares, right? Um, so we'd like to add some extra competition and strength for the archetypes. So we're trying to change a change here that increases the power potential. This does make him weaker Shadow King, but that should still not matter that much, right? Like, so overall, I think this is a good change for Dazzler, a good change for Move. Do I think this is enough to revive Move or bring Move into the meta game? No, I don't. But could be wrong, right? Obviously, there's always people experimenting with Move every patch, so maybe they find something that works really, really well with these couple of changes. But that is, I believe, all of the new changes here. Overall, I'm not really sad about any of the changes here, and I'm happy with a lot of them, to be fair. So this is a really good OTA. In terms of my opinion, I think they've done a lot right here. Hopefully, Blob change means that it's not going to be dominating the meta, right? Like, that is the big question mark here. Is this still too good? I think, like, having the potential drop down, like, from, you're almost losing, like, from 20 base to 15. It's not 15 base, but, like, it's a lot harder to get that 30 power blobs that you're seeing before. So I think that's going to help just kind of tone things down. It was very weird when, like, Blob, you play Infinite, your opponent plays Blob, and your Blob just murders your Infinite, and you're just like, come on, man. Like, what? Yeah, so hopefully that kind of tones that down. Destroyer being changed, Vipers is fine. Viper's the one I'm maybe the most iffy on. Everything else I think is just pretty good. Hercules also doesn't matter, but it's not a bad change. It's just like, I don't think it's gonna do too much, but maybe it does, right? So, but everything else I'm pretty happy with. So overall, a great patch. I think a lot of the changes make sense. They're putting the game in a better direction, and that's really one of the things you want to be asking for every patch. Like, is this moving the game in a better direction? I would say yes. So pretty cool to see. Overall, lots of good stuff. What's your thoughts on this patch? You like it? You hate it? You were a big Blob enjoyer. I feel like you had to know Blob was being adjusted. Like, the card was too problematic. But other than that, the rest of them are absolutely great. So yeah, hope you guys enjoy. Take care of yourselves and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Educated calling snap. Once you watch him, you won't go back. He'll teach you to marble snap. Your skills will be improving. How you doing? You'll hit infinity and won't go back. Educated calling snap.